Welcome to Sinful's Horror Stories. If you're new to the channel, please be sure to subscribe now for quality horror narrations on YouTube. Please hit the thumbs up button. Make sure to hit the bell so you're notified of every weekly upload. Comment below and introduce yourself, and I will be sure to respond. If you want to be featured on an upcoming video, email me. My email will be in the description box below as well at the end of the video. Sit back, relax, stay sinful. I want to share my paranormal story. There are a few different incidents that occurred at a house across the road from me. I also want to share what a badass my dad was now that he's gone. A little backstory. The house across the road from me is an older house. I'd estimate over 100 years old. The original owners passed away in the house in the early 1990s. After their death, the first incident would occur. My dad was close friends with the son of the people who owned the house. After their deaths, him and my dad made a fire outside and sat together just drinking in silence, drinking and grieving. Then, all of a sudden, every light in the house turns on. No one's in the house, and my dad was someone who always denied the paranormal. But when he shared the story, he said it had to be the parents. Now, fast forward 10 years, I'm 17. The granddaughter of the owners have moved into the house with their 2 children, a girl aged 2 and a boy aged 7. I was asked to babysit for them one night. I took the job not knowing what I was in for. And to be honest, we were extremely poor, so that money meant I'd be eating real food for a few days. So I get the kids asleep around 8. I settle in to watch TV. They have cable, which we didn't, so I was so excited to be able to watch something. Then the first incidents happened. The master bedroom was by the living room. The door is shut and I hear scratching coming from the door, but I didn't draw open the door. I sat there with the TV turned up louder so I don't have to hear it until the owners came home around 2 a.m. They asked me to babysit again the next weekend. I didn't want to, but I knew me and my dad needed the money. Same thing, I get the kids to bed around 8 p.m. and I settle in to watch TV. I doze off at some point, something I didn't do the previous time I babysat. Then I hear a deep, raspy voice scream my name in my ear, and I jump up thinking something was wrong with the kids. I run to check. They're still sound asleep. So again, I sit and wait for the owners, terrified. I continue to babysit every weekend because even the little bit of money I made a difference in my life. The next weekend, nothing really happened. I'll add, however, the bathroom was upstairs, and every time I walked up those steps, it felt like something was hovering over my head. Eventually, I started going outside to use the bathroom because I couldn't go up those stairs again. I will add the kids' bedrooms were downstairs as well. Everything was except the bathroom and one room that was bolted shut. More about that later. One weekend I had the flu and couldn't babysit, but suggested a friend to replace me. I talked to him the next day and he said he would never ever babysit in that house again. The only thing he could tell me was that he fell asleep until he heard a deep, raspy scream in his ear. I continued to babysit there every weekend, but I noticed a change in the house. They have crosses hung all around the house. I even noticed a change in the family as they start attending church, which is something they had never done before. Finally, the last time I babysat was the worst night of them all. I get the kids to bed the same as usual. Then I hear the boy in the kitchen. He is standing there holding a butter knife and says that they told him to kill his family. I grab the knife and grab him. I tell him he must never listen to them. Never ever listen. I brought him to the family room and let him play PlayStation until he passes out on the couch. Then the daughter starts screeching and crying. I run upstairs immediately. She's standing at the baby gate pointing in the room and says, "Bad people." I turn the light on and nothing is there. I take her to the family room to cradle her back to sleep. I decide the kids are staying right beside me for the rest of the night. When the parents return, I tell them what happened. They don't seem surprised whatsoever. They just say, "Okay, we'll figure it out." The mother of the family became pregnant not long after, and they stopped going out on the weekends, so my babysitting duties were done to my relief. I remain friends with them. I go over for supper and I play video games with them and stuff like that. Then one night in the middle of the night, 3 months after the baby was born, I see them loading up their vehicle with everything they own. I'm a night owl and it's around 3 a.m., so I go over to see what's up, thinking maybe there's a gas leak or something and they need some help. They just say, "We're going to stay with our family. We'll be back for our things in the next few days." They came back a week later. I helped them load up the moving van and away they went, and I never saw them again. The home is now owned by one of the children of the original owners, a good friend of my father, but it's so empty, so he gives the keys to my dad and asks him to watch over the place during the winter and make a fire every day so the pipes don't freeze. It wasn't long before things started happening again. First, the basement light would be on. My dad would tell me to go shut them off. When I protested, he called me a baby and said, "Just do it." My dad was a real gruff hard ass, a former fisherman, so I'd go over every evening and shut the lights off. That lasted for a week until I realized I should just take the bulb out of the socket, and that was the end of that, but not the end of the story. The next thing to happen upstairs in the bathroom window was a light would turn on every night. At that point I said, "No way am I going up there." Eventually my dad went with me to unplug the lamp. All this time my dad is going over there in the middle of the night to make fires like it's no big deal. One night I'm awake playing PlayStation. He comes and says, "I'm going to make a fire. Why don't you join me?" So we go over. As soon as we walk in, the upstairs light turns on. I freeze. My dad keeps walking, and this is an exact quote. You will likely need to censor it. He says, "Don't you start with me tonight. You know better." He shuts the light off, and suddenly the house doesn't feel so eerie. He looks at me and says, "You just gotta tell them. They know better than to mess with me." We carried on and he made the fire and nothing else happened. A few months later, the owner let us know he'd sold the place, and there's tools and other things left in the house, and that we could go over and take whatever we wanted before he sells things. During the day, I should add, my dad takes some tools from the basement. Then he says there's stuff upstairs too in the bolted room. I freeze and feel like vomiting. The bolted room always felt like there was something in there I didn't want to experience, but we carry on, and we head upstairs. The door isn't bolted anymore. It's torn right off the hinges. It doesn't faze my dad in the least, and he goes inside. I follow. The room is just cluttered with junk, nothing of value, but the walls there had crude crosses drawn on them and a pentagram in the corner of the room. I'm ready to run, but my dad says something that stuck with me. He says, "Those kids never should have fucked around with those Ouija board things." That's when something started to come together. The crosses, the newfound religion. So I asked my dad and he confirmed. They stated that after one night they used a Ouija board to see who was in the house, but they found something evil, something demonic. So they turned to God to protect them. But when the third child came, things started to pick up. So now the house is sold and renovated. A new couple moves in. The wife gets pregnant not long after moving in. She has a baby, and a few months after giving birth, I hear banging outside, and they're loading up a vehicle and they abandon the place. I didn't know them very well, so I don't know what the experience was, but obviously it was something to leave in the middle of the night. There's a new family living there now. I truly hope they don't experience what others have in that house. Finally, Just some theories my dad has about the place. 1. I mentioned the owners died in the house, but he also claims the house was built on an Indian burial ground and whatever they did with that Ouija board. There could be a number of explanations or combinations of everything. I still live in that childhood home, and I still look at that house at night and get goosebumps. My dad is gone now, and I can tell you there's absolutely no way I will ever go back in that house. For context, I'm in school still and work for my family member on certain weekends at a local college selling concessions at the stadium. It's about once to twice a month. The stadium is off towards the edge of town. It's Friday night. I just had gotten out of school and I had to go straight to work. I get to work for 4 hours, and my boss, which is my aunt, tells me we need more spoons for tomorrow's events. We sell ice cream and these events have 5,000 plus people at them. I say okay, I'll grab them on my way home. The only store open with heavy-duty spoons is all the way on the other side of town, and I still wanted to go meet up with some of my friends and mess around. I decide to take the faster but more sketchy way around the outskirts of town. I live in a weather bipolar state. It snowed last night, but I figured the roads would be fine enough even if they weren't plowed. I take off to the store, and the first 5 minutes go by with nothing wrong. I haven't seen a single car or any buildings the entire time, but keep in mind, it's approaching 9 p.m., and I'm on the outskirts of my town, and no one really takes this way in case they really have to. All of a sudden, I see something out the corner of my eye, and it looks like a man, roughly 5'8", I would say, wearing shorts, t-shirt, and backwards hat. He's in the ditch, walking in snow when it's 10 degrees outside. My first thought is to pull over, but I'm on the phone with my mom at that time, and she warns me not to as some things have happened before in this town. Example, a couple years ago a college girl was kidnapped and found dead rolled up in a rug in 2014. I considered stopping, but for some reason I tell myself not to. I wasn't really worried about anything. I'm a young dude driving a big pickup truck, the last type of person anyone would harm, right? I passed a man going about 40 miles per hour. Like I said, the roads aren't the best. I drive not even 500 feet past him, and immediately, a car that I did not see at all before turns on and pulls out of a field entrance off the road and starts to follow me. At first I thought I just was focused on the man in the ditch and didn't see a road, and that's where they came from. But I later found out there was not a road there. Again, I'm not super worried. I've watched my fair share of crime movies and read plenty of stories on this sub, and I didn't feel it was a threat just yet. I start to approach the town again and have to take some turns to get where I'm going. I turn left. The car turns left. I turn right. The car turns right. I went around a roundabout and skipped my turn and go twice as no one else was there. The car follows. At this point I start to worry a little, but maybe they just need to go to the store also. I then pull up to a stop sign and I turn without my turn signal. The car follows. Now, at this point I should have went straight to the police station, but I still didn't think that much of it. I'm 2 miles from the store where plenty of people will be. I take a few more turns and the car continues to follow me. I completely blew up a stop sign at a non-busy intersection, and the car does a quick stop and go and catches up. At this point I'm 2 turns until the store, so I'm not worried. I turn into the store and the car turns in as well. The store also has a gas station, so I pull there first to act like I'm pumping gas. The car sits off to the side of the road in between the gas station and the store. I wait about 10 minutes and the car doesn't move an inch. At this point I start to get worried. I'm a young kid alone at night near the bad side of town. I call my friends I'm supposed to meet up with later on, give them the license plate of the car for the worst case scenario, then take off to the store. I cross the street and the car comes straight behind me. I'm freaking out on the phone, not knowing if I should call the cops or just go. I go and park as close as possible to the store, and the car parks 3 rows behind me. It's getting late at this point and the store is closing soon. Then there's only a couple others in the lot. I turn my truck back on and go park on the complete opposite side of the lot. Get out and I completely bolt inside of the store. I'm not super overweight, but I'm not skinny either. I'm about 6'1", 200 pounds. Who would want anything to do with me? I get spoons, take my time in the store. I go to call my friends to walk back outside, and my phone is dead. I look out the sliding doors and suddenly there's a white van next to the driver's side. It looks like no one's in it, but the back windows are covered, and it's running. Big red flag. I run to customer service and explain everything, but they think I'm some young kid messing around. At the time I didn't see the original follow car, but no way in hell I'm going outside with that van next to my truck. After waiting what seemed like 30 minutes, the van pulls forward, and the original car appears from the side of the building. I was able to see through the Starbucks window, and it seemed like the drivers of both vehicles were speaking to each other, and then drove off. I wait another 10 minutes and dash outside. I speed to my friend's house, and when I get there I park in his garage. My buddy asks why there's a big orange mark on my tire. My heart sinks. When I was inside, the follow car must have marked my tire. After inspecting the rest of the truck, we found a small pipe dropped in the bed of my truck surrounded by snow. It was about 2 inches wide, and I'd say about 18 inches long, wrapped in duct tape. And it wasn't mine. I was alone, no phone, scared in a part of town I'm not familiar with. I try to laugh it off, but now that everyone's asleep, I can't help but think, what would have happened if I walked outside? I've always been sort of ego boosted on the fact I'm a chubby fat dude that no one would mess with, but after tonight I realize anyone can be targeted. So creepy men who followed me all night and waited by my truck, let's not meet. Bonus narration. I want to welcome the homie GenSen to our channel. I will have his channel link in the description box below at the end of the video, so be sure to subscribe to him after the video's done. Enjoy.
Okay, this happened in 2016 when I was 17 years old. First year in college, in film school. I'm now 22 and female. My name's Julia. I lived alone in my first ever apartment. It was really small, but I was really proud of my independence. I never felt unsafe in this apartment for several reasons. There were multiple gates in the residence that needed to be opened through with a code only, and the people who lived there knew. My door had 3 different locks, and it was right next to the university, so most people who lived in the neighborhood were college students. Nothing bad had ever happened in the neighborhood before. I've always had been very careful with locking the door when I left my house. I'd always check twice. I have a slight OCD, so this one time I leave to go to class, and I locked my door. But for some reason, I couldn't get the key out of the lock. It was completely stuck. So I went to get the caretaker of the building to help me get it, but he wasn't there, and I was getting late for class. So I went to class with the key still in the lock. I took off the keychain first so it wouldn't be too noticeable. When I got home, the caretaker was back, so he came with me to help me, but we couldn't get it out of there. For 15 minutes until somehow he did. He told me the lock was damaged, but that I didn't necessarily need to change it, if only if I locked it once instead of twice. I just said, okay, and that was the end of it. I really wasn't worried because of how safe I felt in the building. Flash forward to 2 months later. I was taking out the trash one night around 11 p.m. While on the phone with my sister, I remember telling her that I was out taking the trash. Then that I would take a shower afterwards before heading to a party. As I previously said, I always lock the door, even just to take the trash out. Because of my lock being damaged, I only locked it once. When I got back to my apartment, I found the door unlocked, which immediately alarmed me. So I went into the apartment and locked the door immediately, with 3 different types of locks. When you walk into my apartment, which is just 215 square feet, you have the main room in front of you, and the bathroom door immediately to your left. I had left the bathroom door slightly opened, enough so that I could see that there was a man in my shower, turning his back to me. Naturally, when I saw this, I tried to open the door and leave as fast as I possibly could, except my main lock was damaged from the 2 months earlier, and I couldn't open it no matter how hard I tried. In this moment, all I could think of was the fact that he had to leave as fast as possible. I jumped out the window without really thinking. I figured it was the only solution, except I lived on the 2nd floor, so I completely smashed my ankles in the landing. I started running in whichever way I could. When I got a little bit further from the building, I looked back. The man was there, at my window, watching me run away. I thought of 2 possible outcomes. Either the man was going to jump and chase me, except I wouldn't get far with my twisted ankles, or he'd get scared of the height and be locked in my apartment. Thankfully, he picked option 2. I went to hide in a bush a little further and called the police, who arrived in just 10 minutes because I lived close to the station. They pushed my door open and the man was just sitting there on my couch, holding a kitchen knife, waiting for me to come back. Like he didn't think I would call the police. They arrested the guy and later told me he'd already been arrested for sexual assault, the R word, attempted kidnapping, and attempted murder. They also told me how everything had happened. Like I said, it was a very friendly neighborhood with mostly college students, so he got inside the building by other people holding the door for him. He then heard me telling my sister I was going to take a shower, which is why he was waiting for me in the bathroom. He crocheted my lock while I was taking out the trash. He apparently noticed me on school campus and followed me to my house several times before, succeeding to actually come in. He stayed inside waiting for me because I had recently changed my phone, and the previous one was still on the table, so he thought I didn't have my phone with me to call the police. I don't live there anymore, but after that, to get into the building, we all needed identification proving we lived there. Building IDs were created, and we had to scan them every time. It was the only way to go inside the building. Nothing bad happened in the neighborhood after that. It's back to being very peaceful and friendly. I've known about this subreddit for a while now, but I've never gotten around to telling my own story, which of course I never thought I'd have. Since it's long, I won't bother with a long intro. All you need to know is this happened in my senior year of college, and I live off campus. I had 2 roommates in my apartment, townhouse thing, named Natalie and Katie. Anyways, Katie was out of the night doing some homework in one of the school buildings, and I was awoken at 3 a.m. when I heard some knocking at the door downstairs. I thought it was weird, considering the hour, but I figured someone had the wrong place and would realize and leave. The knocking didn't stop, though. I lied in bed for a good several minutes thinking, yeah, they'll go away now. They'll go away. They'll get bored. As one might expect, though I started to get confused, and then kind of freaked out by this person's persistence. The knocking turned into banging, and I could hear the ignorance go away. Honestly, I probably should have called the police instantly, but it was in the middle of the night, and I was just confused, so I headed to the top of the stairs to see Natalie standing near the door, staring at it. Her room was at the bottom floor, so she just walked up to it. We exchanged a baffled look because of what the heck. It was 3 a.m. and this was weird. Natalie called out and asked who they are and what they wanted. "We're friends of Katie," said the voice on the other end, who sounded male and about our age. "We know her boyfriend, and we heard she was feeling down, so we came here to surprise her." That was already a weird story because, again, 3 in the morning. But thankfully, Katie wasn't even home, so we both informed them of this. "Katie's not here. She's off doing something else." "Good." "They're going to leave, right?" "They came here to see Katie, and she's not here. They'll leave us alone and we can go back to sleep." Just open the door. I know. I know if I had called the police before, I definitely should have done it now. It was weird, though. That night I realized why people do stupid stuff in horror films. Not only had I been woken up out of nowhere, but it feels so real to be in a situation like this. Like there's no way you could actually be in danger. That only thing would happen in horror movies, in true crime documentaries, in the questionable creepy stories online. It would never happen to me. I'm just a random, ordinary, boring person going about my business. I don't need to call the police. I'm sure this will get cleared up and everything will be fine. So yeah, Natalie and I did this stupid thing and tried to argue with them. We told them that again, Katie wasn't there, and there was no need for them to stay. Eventually, Natalie asked them for their names. Throughout the encounter, we made out 2 distinct voices, but only one gave us a name. And I texted Katie without telling them, asking if she was friends with someone with that name. After a couple minutes, during which we were still arguing with this stranger, Katie replied, "I am, but I don't think she knows where I live." That wasn't good, but even worse, she? The person at the door had a male voice, so that was a real name, but not the real person. Whoever this was knew stuff about Katie, like who she hung out with. I told Katie to stay where she was and not to come back until we told her everything was okay. Finally, we told the guys that if they didn't leave, we're going to call the police. No. Don't call the police. Don't call the police. Okay. If we wanted to do something bad, we already would have done it, right? Yeah, that last bit wasn't helping their case. Just open the door, okay? The attempts at reasoning with them basically devolved into them telling us to just open the door. Just open the door over and over again. Until we finally actually did call the police. We hid in Natalie's room and dialed 911 and explained what was going on. Thankfully, there was a police station close by, so it wouldn't take them long to arrive. Unfortunately, I made the mistake of heading back into the living room, telling them through the door that we called the cops. But contrary to what you might think, they actually didn't seem to scare them at all. They seemed only mildly upset, and kept arguing. To this day, I can only assume that they didn't believe us or something. Then we heard a neighbor's home door swing open, in a very pissed off man's voice. "If you don't leave right now, I'm fucking calling the police." For whatever reason, that's what caused them to freak out, and they drove off. The police arrived, and we told them the whole story. Natalie revealed that a couple times she had just barely peeked through the blinds of the window close to the front door, and she noted that there were only 2 guys, but only one of them was ever at the door at any given moment. They would switch, one at the door and the other sitting in the driver's seat of the car parked out front, presumably for getaway purposes. So yeah, that's reassuring. They also hadn't looked drunk, according to Natalie, and they definitely hadn't sounded like they were drunk. There wasn't much the police could do besides sweep the area a bit, but they told us if the stranger showed up again, to immediately call instead of engaging with them. One of the officers did give us the self-defense tactics, and told us what kind of household items/chemicals would work best for self-defense. After making sure everything was okay and reassuring us, they left. And we eventually did call Katie. Told her that the weirdos were gone. She arrived and was understandably a bit shaken up herself. We sat down and asked her who might have known where she had lived. She did know people who had come to the apartment, so some people, certainly. But Natalie hadn't recognized the guys outside as previous visitors. Worse, it turned out that not only did they know Katie's friend's name, but they claimed to know her boyfriend, even though he didn't even live in the state where they were going to school. She swore up and down she didn't know anyone who wanted to hurt her. By this point, it was around 5 a.m., so I didn't even bother going to sleep. Since I was going to a workshop that morning, I told a lot of my classmates the story, and it freaked them out too. And the entire day, Natalie and I jumped every unexpected noise, every shadow, every random moment. That night it was hard to sleep, and I expected to hear knocking at the door at any second. Thankfully, they didn't come back. Ever. But that almost makes things more unsettling. In a way, I'll never even know what they wanted that night. Did they think we were hiding Katie? Was she seeing less than savory people in secret? Did they want to hurt her? If they did, why did they never give up and go looking for her somewhere else? Was all this just an excuse to get into the apartment of a young woman? Did they want to kidnap us, hurt us, or rob us? Who knows? I try not to let it bother me, but I wish I knew if my life was in danger or not that night. I got a feeling I might have been. After all, they weren't wearing face covers, so if they wanted to commit a violent crime, they might want to get rid of the witnesses. But despite how much I wish I knew, yeah, random strange men who insisted we let them inside for unknown reasons. Let's not meet again.